whether it can be read or write operation, then we are calling that set of operation as a transaction. If we are managing that, then we are calling that as a transaction management system. How many states we have in a transaction? It can be active state, partially committed state, failed state or aborted state. Count function is used to count the number of rows in a database table. Hello everybody, a warm welcome to one and all. Welcome back to the session 2 of model question paper discussion on the subject of BCE's 4th semester, that is database management systems. In short, it is DBMS. I am Rohini TS, Department of Computer Science, Vidyashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, Mysuru. So as we all know that in the first session of this model question paper discussion, I had a discussion regarding the part A, that is 2 marks question, and also have discussed one question from the part B. So we'll continue with the second question in this session. We'll have a question here. You can see that here we have a question number 14. In that we have a. So all we know that. So we have to answer completely the sub questions of A or B. So you should not answer one from A or another from B, and you can't expect complete 15 marks out of that. So here first what we have, what is transaction management system? Explain asset properties of a transaction. So here clearly says that it is of 9 marks. So here this definition is for 1 mark and another remaining 8 marks is for this asset property discussion. So question paper pattern can be anything. That means the marks distribution can be 9 plus 6 or 8 plus 7, 10 plus 5. That can be anything. In this we got a question for 9 marks. So here the transaction management is for 1 marks and this asset property is for another 8 marks. So what do you mean by transaction here? It's a logical unit of a processing in a DBMS which entails one or more database access operation, whether it can be read or write operation, then we are calling that set of operation as a transaction. If we are managing that, then we are calling that as a transaction management system. Then why we require this asset property? First you need to understand what is this asset is all about. So here A represent atomicity, then consistency, isolation, durability. These are the different terminologies which we can have for this ACID. And mainly we are going to use this asset property to maintain the consistency and integrity of the data. So you need to explain what is atomicity, what is consistency, what is isolation as well as durability. So when it comes to the atomicity, a single unit of an operation. It is a single unit of an operation. Either it has to execute the transaction entirely or it should not execute at all. So that is what atomicity, which should not further divisible. Then we calling that kind of property as atomicity. Then we have a consistency. If you are changing a transaction or if you are changing a state of a transaction from one state to another state, then there must be a consistency in every state. So it needs to be stable. That is what consistency. Isolation. If I am doing some changes with respect to one transaction, that should not affect the content of another transaction, though it should not affected by the other transaction also. Then we are calling that property as a isolation. Then we have a durability. Up to certain time it has to store the committed data or the transaction which is successfully completed, that needs to be stored in a computer memory. So this is what regarding asset property. Mainly for the purpose of consistency and isolation we will be using this asset properties to have a integrity in a data. So you need to explain ACID separately, then you can write in this way in order to get the 9 marks. Let me go to the next question. That is for 6 marks. 9 plus 6 will be 15. What is that? Write a note on transaction states. Very important question. You can expect it for mention the different types or different states of a transaction, or you can expect it for 5 marks, 6 marks. Okay. In that way, moreover, this question is important. What is that? Write a note on transaction states. How many states we have in a transaction? It can be active state, partially committed state, failed state or aborted state. So with the example, with the diagram, you need to explain this transaction state. So don't forget to write this diagram. With the help of this diagram, you explain all the states what we have in a transaction. That is what it is. of 5 state. If you are writing a diagram, then you can expect 6 marks from this question. So here the transaction, either read or write operation will going to be initiated, then that will be in the active state. So if something goes wrong and if it is got failed, then it will going to reach the failed state. So if it is reached to the failed state, then they will check it out, can be roll back it. So if is possible, then it will reach to the aborted state. Whether it is failed or aborted, it has to terminate. And here if it is in the active state, the transaction gets started, then partially committed. That means what? It will going to reach the stage or end of a transaction, but I don't know whether it will going to be failed or completely done. So that is what partially committed. When it is executing a last statement of a transaction, that is partially committed. If it got committed or the successful transaction is happened, then it reached the committed state. So whether it is aborted, failed, committed or partially committed, then it has to terminate at last. So if it is partially committed and if it is reaching to the committed state, then it has to store the changes in the database. This is how you are supposed to write a diagram. Along with this diagram, explain each stage. What is that? We have a active state, partially committed state, and we have a committed state, failed state, and at last we have a aborted state. So all these 5 states are important when it comes to the transaction. So in this manner, you need to answer for this question. Next, what we have, very important question, that is question number 14, B part. Now we got to know regarding A. So in the 14, we have a in that we have a 1 and 2 sub question, or else you can go with the question B. In that also we will be having 2 sub question. You need to answer either this one or this one. Okay. So if you have more time, then you can answer both after answering all the question. Next, what we have here, explain 1NF, 2NF and 3NF normalization technique, and this is for 9 marks. So if you are having it for 9 marks, then what and all you are supposed to write for it? So you can see we have a 3 normalization form here, 1NF, 2NF and 3NF. So you can expect 3 marks for all the 3 different normalization technique. Fine. So in each normalization, so when it comes to the first normalization, then when I can say this is in the first normal form, it should have only one single value attributes or column. It has to be only single value attribute or column should be there, and values are stored in a column should be of same domain. So for example, for age, I can't store integer and character, all these together. It will be based on the domain. So the domain constraint need to be satisfied for the 1NF or a first normal form, and all the columns in a table should have a unique name. So you should not have student ID, name. In that manner you should not have. So it needs to be unique. And order of data, how it is going to be stored, that does not matter for the first normal form. So here you can see one of the example. We have employee ID, name, job, department, skills. As I told earlier, the value should be single value. So here we have more than one value for a particular attribute, then it is not in the first NF. So in order to make it 1NF, then we have to write only C or Perl or Java. So it can't have more than one value at a time. That is what one example. So what and all you have to write? First write the definition and what are the rules we have for that, write down and write one example table. Then explain it. So we'll go to the second one, that is second normal form. If I want my table to be in the second normal form, first it has to be in the first NF or 1NF. What is the second condition? It should not have a partial dependency. There should not be partial dependency. By taking this example, you can explain the 2NF. So we are not, instead of having a partial dependency, we are making it as an independent table. Then we are having this 2NF or second normalization form. Next we have a 3NF or a third normal form. So in order to have a 3NF, it is understood that it needs to be in the second normal form first. Then it does not have any transitive dependency. So if you are asking a money from your mother should not ask your father. She has to give you directly. That is what, if she is asking, then indirectly you are getting a money from your father. That is what transitive dependency. But that should not be there in this 3NF. So it should not have a transitive dependency. If there is no transitive dependency for non-prime attribute, then the relation must be in the 3 or third normal form. So if there is no transitive dependency on the non-prime attributes, then we can say that kind of relations are under this third normal form. Along with the example, you explain it. We'll see the next question, that is question number 2 in this B. Write a note on different types of attributes. First, you need to see about the marks distribution. It's for 6 marks. You write the definition of an attribute and mention what are the different attributes we have along with the symbol and its working procedure. You take the example and explain. First, we'll see what you mean by an attribute. An attribute is used to describe the property of an entity. So, when we are using an attribute in order to describe its property or a nature of an entity. And which symbol we are using in order to represent the attribute? We are using eclipse in order to represent an attribute. For example, if I have an entity called student and it will going to have a student ID, student name and their phone number, age, all these are the what? Different attributes for a particular entity. What is the first type? That is key attribute. Why we are going to use it? In order to represent some main characteristics of an entity. Mainly it will represent the primary key. So here within the eclipse I am writing the text along with the underline. Then we can say that kind of attribute as a primary key attribute. If student ID is what primary key, then I am writing that ID, along with that I am underlining it. Then we can call that as a key attribute. Write the entity, write the different attributes over here, then mention it as a key attribute. Next, what we have? Composite attribute, which is composed of many other attribute, is called as composite attribute. If you consider a name, so in this name we can have a first name, middle name, last name. Then we are calling this kind of attribute as what? Composite attribute. Next, we have a multi-valued attribute. As the name indicates, multi-value attribute. If an attribute having or it contains more than one value, then we are calling that kind of attributes as a multi-valued attribute. So in order to represent that, we are going to have this double oval. With the help of that, you can explain this multi-valued attribute. And for example, phone number. Same people can have a more than one phone number, but we can't take it for Aadhaar card or a PAN card, right? So it will going to be very conscious when we are representing any of an attribute that must have more than one value. Next, what we have? Derived attribute. An attribute that can be derived from other attribute, then we will calling that as a derived attribute. How we are going to find the age? That too with the help of date of birth or a DOB. So DOB is the actual attribute here, then derived attribute is age. So that is what derived attribute, and we are going to represent with the help of this dashed eclipse. So here we are going to write it in this manner, then we are representing it in this manner. Okay, that is what derived attribute. Next, we'll see the next question, that is question number 15. So now we are done with the question number 14. So we'll see the next question, that is all regarding question number 15. Totally we have a 16 question. So from the 13, 14, 15, 16, all those are regarding part B. So we'll see the first question in the 15th, that is A. Discuss Court's rule. Very important topic. Why? Because from this chapter you have only this content, so it will going to be considered as an important topic. So it is as for 8 marks here. First, you know, right, what do you mean by Court's rule? So when it comes to the Court's rule, totally you are going to have 13 rules in it. So from the rule 0 to rule 12, we have 13 rules here. That's what in standard we are calling it as the Court's 12 rules. because the last rule is all about rule 12. So it will start from 0th rule. So we have a person called E.F. Codd, the scientist, one who invented this relational model for database management system. So based on this relational model and relational data was, this Codd's rule was invented. So you need to write the definition of each rule here. Okay. What is rule 0? That states that for a system to be qualified as a RDBMS, then it must be able to manage the database entirely through relational capabilities. It must be a table first, then I can consider that kind of DBMS as a RDBMS. That is rule 0. In the rule 1 we have a information rule. In the rule 2, guaranteed access. Each content whatever we have in a database, that should be accessed with the help of table name, primary key and column, row, column, and the table name should be used in order to access the content. Next we have a systematic treatment of null. So if I am considering a null as a missing value in one of my table, then throughout that table that needs to be missing value only. If I am considering that as what empty value, then it should be treated in the same way wherever I am using that null value. So systematic treatment of null is this rule 3, and we have a rule 4, that is active online catalog. This will going to have a complete structured description of a whole database that must be stored in an online catalog. Whenever we require to know about this, that needs to be accessible only for the authorized user. Then we have a rule 5, that is powerful language. In order to communicate to a database, we require one powerful language. So that is what is required in this Codd's rule. You can take the example as SQL. Next we have a rule number 6, that is view updation rule. If anything is possible theoretically, then that needs to also be possible practically. That is what rule 6 is all about, view updation rule. If it is theoretically updatable, then it should be updatable by the system practically also. Then we have a rule 7, that is relational level operation. It has to allow us to do the insertion, deletion, updation, all the basic operation should be allowed in any of a transaction. Next rule 8, physical data independence. So the physical storage of a data should not matter to the system. It should not affect the application. If I am doing any changes to the physical data or a physical storage space, that application or a software should not get affected. That is what physical data independence. And also we have a rule 9, that is logical data independence. If there is any changes in the logical structure of a database, the user view of a data should not get changed. If I am doing anything in the level 1, that should not affect the level 2. If I am doing anything in the level 2, that should not affect the level 3. That is what we are expecting in the physical data independence and logical data independence. Next we have a rule 10, that is integrity independence. The database should be able to enforce its own integrity rather than using any other program. It must have a ability to digest itself. That means we are not supposed to use any of other utility software in order to run it properly. It must have its own integrity constraints. Next rule 11, distribution independence. It should work properly regardless of its distribution across the network. It can't say, so I am in the US server, I won't give the data to Indians. It should not be like that. So distribution independence in the sense what? Wherever it got distributed, at last if the user is doing a transaction, if they are trying to access the content, it must reach to the user with a proper time. Then we have a last rule, that is rule 12, non-subversion rule. Okay, so no VIP entry for the temple. So everybody has to wait in a queue, then they have to take a darshan. That is what non-subversion rule. So if low level access is allowed to a system, it should not be able to subvert or bypass integrity rule to change the data. So there must be no accessibility to the low level. Why? Because there is the place where we are storing the actual data. So all these are the different E.F. Codd's rule we have. We have total 13. So by Oakley we have a rule 12. So from rule to rule 12. Next question. Explain different join commands in SQL. This is for 7 marks here. We have a different types of join and we are going to use a join mainly to combine the rows from 2 or more tables. which will be based on the relational column between them. Based on the different number of columns or based on the criteria of a column, we are fetching or we are combining a rows from one or more table. Then we are calling that as a join operation here, and it is a binary operation which allows you to combine join product selection in one single statement. Then what is the use of having this join? Is that it helps you to combine the data from two or more DBMS table. Then what are the different types of join we have? Inner join, left join, right join, full join, self join, and also we have a outer join, self join, outer join. Fine. We'll see this first one. Here I have a table that consists of employee ID, employee name and city, salary and their age. Along with that, I have one more table called project. In that we have a project number, employee ID and department. By taking this as an example, we are combining a data or we are combining a rows of a specified column by making use of a join. So when it comes to the inner join, it will select the record that have matching values in both the tables. If I have a matching in both the table and table 1 and table 2, then I am combining that particular data. That is what inner join. Write its syntax and query in order to accept the content. So here we have a inner join, that is joining a table 1 and table 2 on the basis of certain condition. Next, in the same way for the left join. So in this left join, as the name indicates, this will going to return all the values from a left table, and which we have a matching value in the right table, that is only going to be displayed. Otherwise, it will return the null value. So table A will going to be completely covered. Whatever we have in a table B which is matching with the table A, only that content will be displaying. So same way, write the syntax and write the query. So here we can see that we have a left join here. Here also we have a left join. Fine. Next type is all right join. As the name indicate again, here it will going to return all the value from the rows of a right table, and it is finding a matching values with the left table. If we got any match in the left table, that will going to be displayed. Otherwise, it will return a value as null. So this is right join. Again, write the syntax along with a query. So here it will be right join. So here also we are going to have a right join of two tables, employee and project. Here you can see the output. Next, what we have? Full join. Full join is a result of a combination of both left and right outer join. So here also what I am not finding only the similar object from a table 1 and table 2. Instead of that, we are combining all the rows from table 1, table 2. That is what we are calling it as a full join, and join table have all the records from both the table. So this is how we are going to represent the full join along with the syntax and query. Here you can see the syntax and example. So this is how you are supposed to answer in order to get this 7 marks. Let me move to the next question, that is 15th question. In that we have a B, explain, insert, select and update command in SQL. So now we'll see, here it is for 9 marks. It clearly says that each command will going to give you 3 marks. Okay, write the syntax. First you need to write the definition of it. That means why I require this insert, select and update. Okay, that is the first thing. Once you are done with the definition, then you need to write its syntax. Fine. Then write one query. By taking one example, write a query. So if you are writing these 3 points, then you will be able to get the complete marks from this particular commands. And all the commands are important. You need to learn its syntax along with the example. Fine. So here we have a insert, select and update command. Well, see the first one, that is insert command, mainly to add a new rows of a data into a table of a database. If I wanted to add a new rows to the table, then we have to use this insert statement. Then here you can see the syntax, insert into table name, then you have to write its value. What are the different column we have and what is the value that we are giving for a particular column, that you have to mention, or else you can take in another way, insert into table name values and within the bracket you are writing the values. So if you are using a numbers, no need to take a single quote. If you are not using number or if you are having a character and all, then there must be a single quotation here. That is what how we are going to insert a value into the table by making use of this insert command or a statement. Next we have a update. So mainly we are going to use this update to change the data through this update command, and mainly it is used in order to modify or update an already existing row or any of a rows of a table. Here you can see the syntax update table name, and we have to use a keyword called set. So in this we are setting a new value for a column, that is column name is equal to value. You can change the value of any number of column in a particular table on the basis of certain condition. There we are going to use this where condition. Next we have a select statement. In this select statement mainly it is used to fetch the data from a database table which returns the data in the form of result table. So here you can see that I need to select a different column 1, column 2 up to column n from the table name. I have to mention a name of a table and we can have a condition. On what condition? I am fetching the different columns from a particular table. Then you can also use group by, having, order by. So all these are the different clauses which is of optional part. If you wish to have it in your query, then you can have it in the select statement. Okay, this is how you are supposed to answer for this insert, update and select commands in a SQL. We'll see the question number 2, that is for 6 marks, write a note on aggregate function. Why we require this aggregate function? We'll see. SQL aggregate function is used to perform the calculation on multiple rows of a single columns of a table. So, I am taking only one column. In that, I have multiple rows and I am performing certain operation on the multiple rows of a single column. Then we are calling that kind of function as what? Aggregate function. All these are the inbuilt function. It will going to take a set of values as an input, but it will produce us only one or a single value as a resultant. So then what are the different aggregate functions we have? Count, sum, average, minimum and maximum. As the name indicates, this will going to count the number of rows and this will sum will going to sum up all the rows of a particular column. Average will going to sum up and divided by the total number of elements in that particular column. Then it will give you the average value, and it is gives the minimum value of a particular row in a given column, and maximum value will going to return the maximum value of a particular column in a set of rows. First what we have, count function is used to count the number of rows in a database table, and here you can write the syntax of this count. And if you are writing count of star within parenthesis, if you are writing a star asterisk symbol, then it will going to count all the duplicates, and also it will going to consider the null value also. Okay, so here I am taking one example with respect to the product master. In that we have a 10 items, 10 and we have certain company and its quantity, rate and cost. By taking this example, we are finding a sum, minimum, average, maximum and count. So here count, write the syntax and write an example. Select count from the product master. So this will going to return the total number of rows we have in it. So here you can see one more example. Next I have a sum function mainly to use to calculate the sum of all the selected column. It work on a numeric field only. So we can't sum up the character field or binary field. We have to use this for numeric field only. So sum you can take the distinct expression here and select sum of cost. I am adding all the cost of all the 10 rows from the product master table. So it will be of 670. Okay, write the syntax, write an example. In order to write the example, first you need to write one example table. Next what we have, average function used to calculate the average value of a numeric type. This will going to returns the average of all the non-null values. It not going to consider a null value which is non-null, that will going to be added up divided by the total number of rows. Then we can get this average. We have a syntax here and select average of cost from the product master. If it is 670 and its average is 67. Okay, and what about this maximum function used to find the maximum value of a certain column? In order to find the maximum value of a particular column, then we are using this max. The syntax will be like this: select max of rate, which is having more rate in this product master that we are selecting. So in that output is 30. Then we have a minimum function to find the minimum value of a particular column, and it is minimum, select minimum of rate, which is minimum in that rate of a product master that will going to be given as a resultant. Okay, that is how you are supposed to answer for the aggregate function. That got over with question number 15. That is all regarding unit 3. So we have a question number 16, that is from a unit 4. What we have in it? Well, see, in the A we have a define concurrency, explain various methods of handling concurrency. So here you can clearly say that it is of 9 marks. The definition is for 1 mark, and the various method of handling concurrency is for another 8 marks. This definition is for 1 marks and various method of handling that concurrency is for another 8 marks. We'll see the database concurrency first. It is the ability of a database to support a multiple users and processors working on the database concurrently. If it is taking place simultaneously, and if more than 2 users are working at the same time on the same data, then we are calling that as a concurrency. Then we have to control it, otherwise we are going to end up with a isolated data, or it is inconsistent data. There will be no consistency, or there is no integrity in the data. So in order to have all those things, or in order to satisfy the ACID property, we require this concurrency control. Then how we are going to use this concurrency control? Why it is required? It prevents 2 users from editing the same record at the same time, and also it serializes the transaction for backup and recovery. Mainly for the purpose of maintaining a consistency and integrity in our data, we are going to have this concurrency control, and this will going to be helpful for us in order to guarantee the serializability, and also it ensures the isolation property. Then what are the different technique we have in order to have this concurrency control, or how we are going to control the concurrent execution? That too by making use of log based and time based. So when it comes to the log based, here we are locking a data items and thus preventing a current transaction from accessing. We are locking a resources, then we are using it. And timestamp, we are giving certain time or executing a transaction which is based on time, which will be based on the ordering. They are going to allocate some time for a particular transaction. On that time only it has to execute. So we'll see about this logs. Here lock is a variable mainly to control the access to the data item, and here in these logs we have a 2 types. One is shared log, that is also considered as a read log. We have a exclusive logs, also considered as a write log. So in this shared log, when we wanted to read, only to perform a read operation, then we can lock the resources, and if you wanted to update or if you wanted to make any modification in the data, then we have to use this write lock. And here we have certain lock instruction, write the lock instruction. Along with that, you need to explain the 2-phase locking protocol. In another way, this topic is also important. What is 2-phase locking protocol? 2-phase locking protocol, 2PLP, that is what? Okay, so in this we have a 2 phase. One is growing phase and another one is shrinking phase. So in the growing phase, we can obtain a lock and we can perform a read and write operation here, and here we are not able to release a lock. But when it comes to the second phase, that is shrinking phase, so here we can't obtain any lock, but we have to release a lock once it reaches to the lock point, and we may not obtain the locks. So here you can see the example. Transaction will going to be begins, lock is attained in the growing phase, and lock is will going to be released in the shrinking phase. So this is how we are going to maintain a concurrency control with the help of this locking protocol. Next we have a certain locking protocols drawbacks that also I mentioned here. Second type is all regarding timestamp ordering protocol. So in this timestamp ordering protocol, mainly to order the transaction which is based on their timestamps, whether it is 2 seconds, 5 seconds. However, we are giving a time for a particular transaction. Based on that, it is going to allocate the resources for a particular transaction. So it's always in the ascending order of a transaction. Moreover, we are going to give a priority for the older transaction than the higher one. So which comes first, then we are giving more privilege or we are giving more priority to that older transaction than giving a priority to the first higher transaction or which is newer for the transaction. That is what you have to write about this timestamp ordering protocol. And here I have read and write timestamp. Along with that, in order to keep track of this time axis for reading and writing, we have a maximum RTS and maximum WTS. Maximum RTS is related to read, maximum WTS is related to write or wrote operation. Fine, that is how you are supposed to answer. We'll see the second question, that is for 6 marks. Discuss various database backup or recovery technique. What are the different database backup or recovery techniques we have? This is for 6 marks. In this we have 3 different ways of having a backup. First is full database backup. So we are completely backing up complete database. So that may include a description, schema, complete table and its structure, whatever it is in the database, completely everything will going to be backed up. That too with the help of this full database backup. We have a differential backup. So for example, on the month of September, if I am doing this full database backup and if something goes wrong in between, until the next full transaction or full database backup, what something goes wrong or what are the changes which is happening, that will going to be stored in this differential backup. So mainly it shows only the data which is changed that have occurred since the last full database backup. After the full database backup, whatever the changes had happened, that will going to be stored in this differential backup. Next we have a transaction log backup. So in this, instead of storing a complete or instead of having a backup of complete database or till certain time in between gap data type, here we are storing all the events that have occurred in the database, like every record or every single statement which is executed will going to be backed up. So with the help of this, we can secure our data in the database. So it can be full database backup, differential backup, and we have a transaction log backup. So here for this 6 marks, each type is carrying 2 marks. Okay, that is how we have to answer. Next, we'll see about the question number 16, B part. In that we have a first question, write a note on hashing and B plus minus tree content. So this is for 10 marks. You can expect 5 marks for hashing and another 5 marks for B plus minus tree. We'll see about this B plus minus tree. So why we require this moreover? Mainly we have a relational database, that is RDBMS, and it will going to restrict the size of a record should not be longer than the size of a block. So if I have a block, that size of a record should not be greater than this block. It should fit within the given block. And also to simplify the buffer management and free space management. That is what the main restriction we have in order to have advantages with respect to the buffer management and free space management. But what about the large objects that are need to be stored in a special files or a collection of files instead of being stored with the other attributes of a records in which they occur. So if I have a large objects in a database, that needs to be kept in a separate special files. Instead of having it, we can have this B plus minus tree that will going to help us in order to contain the large object. So large objects are often represented by making use of this B plus tree minus file organization methodology. In this, we are able to store the large objects of a database. So mainly this permits us to read an entire object or specified byte which is ranges in the object, as well as to insert and delete the parts of object. So with the help of this B plus minus tree, we are able to have an arrangement of this records of a file. Next, here we have a hashing. It's an effective technique to calculate the direct location of a data record on the disk without using index structure. Instead of bothering about the index structure and instead of bothering about the where we have that location, here we are using a hashing technique that will directly calculate the location of a data, and mainly this will going to use hash function with a search key as a parameter to generate the address of a data record, where the particular record is located in a database that we are finding with the help of this hash organization method. So for this we have a bucket and hash function. This bucket is what we're going to store the data in a bucket format, and it is considered as a unit of storage. I wanted to store the data, for that we require this bucket, and also we have a hash function, the function which is helping in order to access the content. That is what hash function, and with the help of this we are going to access a particular data, or we are accessing a particular record instead of bothering about the indexing. So if it is 100, then it will going to be considered as a database. If it is 101, then it will be considered as a Java. So that instead of searching or instead of maintaining certain indices, we are directly able to collect the address or a location of a particular record. That is what the reason we are having this hashing technique. Very, very important topic, hashing and B plus minus tree. We'll see the second question. Define the following. So if it is for 5 marks, then you can expect different 5 terminologies. You need to define that. Okay. First, that we have a logical database. All terminologies is of 1 mark each. Logical database mainly uses only hierarchical structure. That means it will going to have a tree-like structure of a table, that is data is organized in a tree-like structure and data is stored as a records that are connected to each other through edges. Then it will be in this manner. Here all these are the different nodes and all these are the edges. Next, what we have? Web database. So web-based database management system is one of the essential part of a DBMS, and mainly this is used to store the web application data. So wherever we are having online data, that is all will going to be stored in this web database. Next, we have a third one, that is distributed database. In this distributed database is a database that is not limited to one system. As the name indicates, distributed in nature. All from different resources it will going to store the data. So it is spread over the different site, that is multiple computers or over a network of a computer. So whatever we have in this distributed database, that is not only going to be stored in a particular database or a particular system or a network. It will be distributed over different computers and different network with the different sites. We'll see the next question, that is what data warehousing. Very, very important topic. What do you mean by it then? It is a repository or an archive of information gathered from multiple sources stored under a unified schema at a single site. So it's like a dustbin. It is gathering all the data from different sources. Out of it we are fetching which is good or bad, or which is necessary or which is not so required. Then we are calling it as a data warehouse. Then what we have at the last, that is data mining. Here we have collected all the data from different sources. So by making use of this data mining, we are we are fetching a data which is required in order to represent the knowledge. That is the process of semi-automatically analyzing a large database to find the useful pattern. So instead of having all the unnecessary or which is not so relevant for the data, instead of having that, we are retrieving or we are accessing only the useful pattern. Then we are calling that process as a data mining. It's all about my today's session. I hope you all enjoyed and you all understood how will be the pattern of your database management systems question paper. I wish you all very good luck. Do your exams well. Let me meet you in the next sessions. Until that, keep learning, keep on growing. Thank you.